Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I greet you, my dear brothers and sisters in faith and in humanity, as Imam Sohaib always says it, with the greeting of peace in the Muslim tradition. Peace and blessings be upon you all. My name is Sabrina Mirza, and I serve as the assistant to the Muslim Life Chaplain here at Princeton University. And I want to really warmly welcome you all to this program on behalf of the Muslim Life Program, which is coming together with the Hindu Life Program and hosting this really special, intimate conversation between Hindu chaplain Vineet and Muslim chaplain Sohaib Sultan. I want to thank Vineet and the Hindu Life Chaplain for inviting us to co-host this, and I want to thank the co-sponsoring student organizations, the MSA, Muslim Student Association, and the PHS, the Hindu Student Group. As I mentioned, this program is bringing together the Hindu Life Program and the Muslim Life Program, and these are both religious programs that are operating out of the Office of Religious Life at Princeton University. The Hindu Life Program is the first in the nation dedicated to Hindu practice on university campus. The Muslim Life Program is a full-time program also dedicated to the Muslim practice on campus, and both chaplain Vineet and Chaplain Sohaib have built really vibrant communities on Princeton's campus that extend to the community beyond, and they both host really amazing events, artistic presentations and scholarly conversations, a wide range, and you're invited to join in all of that. In a little bit, I'll just put the link in the chat, but it's hindu.princeton.edu for the Hindu Life Program, and it's muslimlife.princeton.edu for the Muslim Life Program. And we welcome you to join and subscribe to our email list so that you can keep informed with our programs. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, bringing together two colleagues and dear friends who are exploring death and dying within their own faith traditions. And just a little bit more about who we have. We have Chaplain Vineet with us, who will be interviewing our beloved Chaplain Imam Sohaib, and Vineet is the coordinator for the Hindu Life Program. He's also previously served as an adjunct professor, attorney, communications consultant. He's the nation's first-time full-time Hindu chaplain, and he's a program director of the Hindu Life Program. Imam Sohaib Sultan is the first full-time Muslim chaplain at Princeton University. He's a coordinator of the Muslim Life Program, and he's served here for the past 12 years. And he's just beyond words, so beloved to the Muslim community and beyond. And we as a community just so achingly bid farewell to him on Friday when he delivered his final sermon on Friday. And in order to take leave from the university to tend to his health and his family for the time that God allows for him. And we ask and pray that every moment of his is blessed till the very end. Without further ado, I want to begin the program. We'll begin with an opening prayer from one of the co-presidents of the Muslim Student Association, and then we'll go into the dialogue between our chaplains, and we'll close with a prayer from the Hindu student organization, and that's a little bit of how the program will go. With that, I want to invite our dear brother Fawaz Ahmed, who is a junior at Princeton majoring in computer science and a co-president and just a wonderful friend of the Muslim Life Program, overall amazing person. Fawaz, I'll leave it to you.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Greetings of peace, love, and blessings to all of you. Really honored to be here, really looking forward to speaking and hearing from Chaplain Vinny and Imam Sohaib. I think two people that I've learned so much from these past couple of years. And I want to start off by reciting Surah Fatiha, the first chapter of the Quran. It is quite literally, the meaning of this chapter is the opening. So I think would be the best fit. And then I'll also be reciting two verses from the 55th chapter of the Quran, Surah Rahman, the Surah of the Most Merciful. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Praise belongs to God, master of the worlds, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, the master of the day of judgment. It is you alone we worship, and it is you alone that we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those that you have blessed, not of those who incur your anger or of those that have gone astray. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. These are the verses of Surah Ar-Rahman. Everyone on earth perishes. The only thing that remains is the face of your Lord, full of majesty, bestowing honor. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. And with that, I'll turn it over to our wonderful chaplains.
Thank you so much, Fawaz, for that beautiful opening prayer. In many ways, you've already brought us right to the topic of our conversation together. Before I ask the first question of my dear brother, Imam Sohaib Sultan, I just want to take another moment to, I won't be able to express it actually, but let me at least try to put into words that which no words can do justice to, as far as the kind of gratitude that I'm feeling in my heart right now. There is no more precious gift, as far as I'm concerned, and no greater blessing than I could ask for, and that perhaps, speaking for all of us here, that we could ask for, than the preciousness, the treasure of Sohaib's time and energy. I want to especially thank his family, his beloved partner Arshi and little Radia, and the whole family for allowing us the gift of his time and energy. It's so bittersweet that somehow, by the inconceivable arrangement of our divine beloved, it's quite possible that this will be, in this lifetime at least, in this realm of existence, this will be a final opportunity to hear teachings of this type from Imam Sohaib. And I'm just so grateful for that. So thank you so much, my brother. I love you. And I know that everyone gathered here has so much love and gratitude in our hearts right now for you. So we're looking at living and dying with grace. And that's a word that has become really kind of common, even within the secular space of the idea of grace. And we can talk about grace in so many ways, but particularly drawing from your own faith and faith tradition and the experience of this past year. Can you just share with us a little bit what this idea of living and dying with grace means to you?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Vineet Bhai, and everyone gathered for this precious gift of your time, and for allowing me to spend a few moments reflecting on some of these important questions, and for giving me an ear and giving me your hearts. And it is a bittersweet moment to bid farewell to a community that is really beloved to me. And There's nothing in my life that I found to be more precious than to build the Muslim life community at Princeton University, and to do it in a multi-faith setting, as we have had the opportunity to do through the Office of Religious Life. And a major component of that is the graciousness with which I built this loving relationship with Vineet Bhai. And I have regrets about how little time we spent together. But this is also the nature of the life of this world. In our holy book that is known as the Quran, it is said that when the angels come to take the soul, they will ask the soul, how long did you tarry on earth? And it says in one of the chapters of the Quran, chapter 20, that the righteous souls will say that we were on earth for maybe 10 days. And God intervenes after that and says, the more perceptive among them would have said, we only were on earth for a day. So in reality, it feels that we're here for a very, very short amount of time. And we always have regrets about all of the things that we were not able to do together. And I think among them is this quality of trying to live graciously. And as Vineet Bhai said, this has become a very common term nowadays, even in the secular world. But I think it draws from the holy and it draws from the religious universe, which is this idea that graciousness is this beautiful word and term that is a catch-all for many of the qualities that the righteous and that the believer and that the pious and that the noble person should aspire to. The qualities of patience, the qualities of compassion, the qualities of tolerance, and the list can go on. But I think what I have found is that living with graciousness, when one is healthy and strong and in full control of their capacities, or at least thinks that they are in full control of their capacities, is much easier because there's a type of coherence there and a type of comfort there that one is allowed to be present with. That is so much more difficult when one is dying. Because when one is dying, one loses their sense of control, their sense of dignity, their sense of direction, their sense of strength. And you feel that you are totally dependent rather than the veil of independence, which is the veil that is often veiling us and making us believe that we are the strong man, whereas in reality, we're always the faqir, as it is said in Sufi poetry. And even in the Quran, it says, Wallahu ghaniyu wa antumul fuqara, that God is the one who is rich and you are the poor, right? So that's the reality. But when God gives us strength, we have this sense that we are strong and maybe God is poor, but then when we become weak, that veil is lifted and there's the reality that is shown to us, which is that we are in fact very, very weak beings. The Quran says that we have made the human being in a state of da'ifa, in a state of weakness. And that's the reality. So when you become ill, when you become sick, when you are dying, you start to see this reality. Being gracious, meaning being patient, being compassionate, being kind, in this state, I have found is particularly difficult because you're under a lot of medication. You are, your sense of dignity is being stripped away, and so therefore, showing graciousness in this state is much more difficult. But that's the higher test I have found, and this is where the hard work of the heart work, right? This is where the hard work of the heart work is really, propelling me and pushing me forward. That how strong is that spiritual heart that you've developed? not that physical heart that God gave you as a gift for a very long time, but now that your physical heart is weak, what is the strength of your spiritual heart? And that's the question that I'm confronted with as a dying man. And it's a difficult question. There's days where I cry. There's days where I weep because it's so difficult to it's so difficult to bear witness to this unveiled reality of who I truly am. But then there's other days where I feel I feel so blessed that God has given me an opportunity to go through this journey of trying to strengthen my spiritual heart, so that I may come to God's door, as a person who is in a state of what we say qalbun salim, in a state of a peaceful and submissive heart, rather than in a state of an arrogant and rebellious heart. And so that's my hope, that before God takes my soul, I will have achieved this qalbun salim, this peaceful and submissive heart. So that's what graciousness is for me.
So beautiful. Thank you. I'm reminded of something. We've spoken about this before privately, but I wonder if maybe we can go a little bit deeper in this gathering as well. But I'm reminded of this idea that very much resonates with my own Hindu tradition of grace as being a matter of receiving gifts. You spoke about the gift of the spiritual heart and the gift of even the physical heart and the body, seeing this life of however many days, weeks, months, or years as a gift that we receive, not as anything that we accomplish or that we even deserve or are entitled to. In Sanskrit, there's a phrase or a word which is sometimes translated as grace, and the word is prashad. I think in a previous conversation, Sohaib, you might have mentioned a similar word, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but rahmat.
Right.
So maybe there's some similarity there. The idea with prashad is that it's grace that is given, and that our efforts are to receive that grace. Our efforts are not to demand it. It's not to command it. It's not to deserve it or earn it, but simply to receive it. And those on the call, perhaps, who are familiar with or from a Hindu tradition, they may know that prashad often evokes for us, in the physical sense, some sanctified food, because when we go to like a worship service or a temple, part of the ritual is receiving this sanctified food as a symbolic representation of this. So that's also called prashad. And I think it's a really powerful lesson, because when we go to receive that prashad, we go like this, with our palms open. And it so much reminds me of what you just spoke about going before God as a beggar, as a fakir, that this is my actual position. I dress it up in so many ways, but my real position is before you, I'm just like a beggar. And the other wonderful lesson we learned from this giving of prashad is, when we receive it, according to the tradition, we receive whatever is given to us. So we may prefer one kind of fruit over another. Often in Hindu temples, you're given just a simple fruit as a symbolic, offering. But it's not for us to dictate the terms. It's not that, I want an apple, but I don't want an orange, or, I prefer bananas, but coconut is terrible. It's whatever is given. That's not our, it is not for us to dictate the terms. It's for us to trust that whatever is meant to be given to us in that moment, that's what will be given to us. And that resonates so much with what I'm hearing you describe as this consciousness with which you're approaching this, this very difficult and trying time of transition.
Yeah. Vineet Bhai, everything you said can be said, just the same from the Islamic spiritual perspective and tradition. And this is one of the reasons I always love being in conversation with you, because I'm like, there's another shared tradition right there, And, as you said, one of the words we can think of for grace in the Arabic Islamic cosmology is rahma or rahmat. And what's really interesting is that, Fawaz, may God preserve him, when he recited those opening lines of the chapter of the opening chapter, he translated it in a particular way, which is a good translation. But this is a contentious translation, as are all of our translations. We know when we translate anything from one language to another, it's always contentious. And the one translation that I actually like quite a bit is the one that is found in the translation of the Quran translated by Muhammad Asad, in which he translates that opening line as Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, being in the name of God, the most gracious, the dispenser of grace. So Ar-Rahman is the state of God as being the most gracious. And then Ar-Rahim, and you can just, you can even hear it in your ears that those two words are related and they both come from Rahmat. That Ar-Rahim is the act of dispensing that grace. And just as you said, God, dispenses his grace as he wishes. And God, being the most wise teacher, dispenses whatever grace God chooses to dispense in whoever's life he chooses to dispense it in, based on what that person needs in order to arrive at God's doorsteps with this qalbun salim, with this submissive, pure heart that we were talking about. And so therefore, from an Islamic spiritual perspective, everything that God does in our lives is nothing but rahmah. And so our health and our wealth and our strength is rahmah, but so is our illness, and so is our poverty, and so is our moments of great weakness, that this is also rahmat. And I have personally found in my own life that this illness, going through cancer, has actually been exactly what my heart needed. This has humbled me, and this has unveiled for me certain realities. And cancer has cured for me certain internal spiritual ailments that I have struggled with for too long, as it destroys my physical body and being. So I see cancer very much as a great rahmat, from God, and giving me exactly what I needed to return to God peacefully. And a lot of people will hear this and say, this guy has definitely lost it. He's taken way too much morphine at this point, right? But the reality, if you think about it, is that, nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to leave this world. There's too many attachments that we have. And even at the age of 80, like my father who lives with me, may God preserve his life and his health. He lives with me. He's 80 years old, and he's having a very difficult time accepting that I am on the brink of death at the age of 40, and he is still living vigorously at the age of 80. And at the age of 80, he doesn't want to go anywhere other than stay here and continue doing what he's doing and loving who he loves and loving what he does best. So we never want to leave. Whether you're 40 or 80 or 120, you never want to leave. But at some point you have to leave. This is the way that God has decreed the way the world to be. And there's a lot of rahmat in that as well, for oneself as well as for other people. Because it's not good for all of us to be around forever, that's for sure.
Sohaib, I remember in those first few days where you shared the diagnosis with your colleagues at Princeton, I remember you speaking so much, even in those early days, of what you just shared now, of this idea of God's decree. In fact, I was looking at, in preparation for our conversation today, I was looking at some notes that I very quickly and hastily jotted down in one of our first conversations. And in kind of big, excited lettering in my notebook, I had written down contentment with God's decree, because that was the phrase that you had used. And I hear you speaking to that again. But I want to ask a question that I think is bearing very heavily on many of our hearts. And that is, when I think about being content with something, I often think about it as related to understanding that or accepting that thing. And it's much harder for me to think about contentment with something that I just can't understand. And so when you describe, for instance, your 80-year-old father, I can't even imagine what he's going through, but I can also, there's something that's very compelling about that, because it from his point of view, perhaps it makes no sense. It's not something that he can wrap his mind around. It's not something that he can understand. But when you speak about contentment with God's will, it seems like you're not talking about understanding in an intellectual way God's plan. It seems like you're speaking about something deeper, something different. So can you help us to better understand, when you speak about that idea of contentment, what is it that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This is not an intellectual contentment as if I've completely figured out God's divine plan and the wisdom behind the wisdom and the reality behind the reality. It's not that, because I think that from our earthly physical perspective, we actually don't have a proper view into what God's ultimate plan is for us and for the world. And in fact, there's one of the most epic stories that is told, and one of the most contentious stories that is told in the Quran is recited every Friday as a spiritual practice, which is chapter number 18, in which the prophet Moses meets a teacher by the name of Khidr. And, he asks this teacher that, may I accompany you on a journey and learn from you? And the teacher says to him, you won't be able to patiently bear with me what it is that I do, because whatever I do will be too confounding for you to experience. And Moses begs him and he says, but please just, give me a chance. And it's a long story that I can't, fully recollect here because of time. But what's interesting is that there's these three things that his teacher Khidr does, which Moses totally objects to and says, how could you do such a thing? Because from a physical, worldly perspective, it just seems totally wrong and unjust. And every single time Khidr says, didn't I tell you, you won't be able to bear patiently with me? Until after the third time, he says, okay, this is, when Moses objects a third time, he says, okay, now is the separation between you and me. But before we separate, let me explain to you why I did these three things. And he offers a very compelling explanation, but the explanation requires a perspective of the world to come, of a reality that unveils the reality of the physical world. And without a knowledge of that reality, everything that happened from the worldly perspective doesn't make any sense. So it's not about intellectually comprehending everything that God is doing to us, but it's about this spiritual conviction, not just faith, but spiritual conviction that we have a good opinion of God. And whatever God is doing in our lives and whatever God is doing in the world is out of the agency of goodness. And therefore, we accept it as a bitter pill that we may have to take in order to cure the incurable. And that perhaps our teacher, in his sternness, or what we may perceive as sternness, is actually protecting us from something very dangerous, and that he's actually, giving this to us out of his immense grace, immense mercy, immense generosity and kindness. So it's a conviction that is born out of the heart, rather than some sort of intellectual comprehension of what we are experiencing. And for me personally, when I look at it from that perspective, it has been very comforting, and it has allowed me to go on this very difficult journey of illness and pain and suffering, and having to experience the sadness of saying goodbyes to my loved ones, especially my beloved daughter and wife and parents. But also, I think embedded within that is, this faith that we have as Muslims, that the song of separation is a painful song, but it's one that eventually is turns toward happiness, because there is this eternal reunion that is joyous, and that will make the experience of separation in this world feel like only that of the blink of an eye. And so I think that's an important component of being at peace with God's decree and being content with God's decree.
I love that that idea of love and separation. In my own tradition, within the larger Hindu tradition, my own lineage is a devotional lineage, and a part of that sort of devotional theology, and this is quite esoteric, and so it's not everyone won't be able to really kind of like get into this. I grant, but there is actually a principle that it is in that separation, that longing, that we experience greater union with the divine, because in that longing, the love intensifies. And so some of the greatest poets, saints, and mystics, they may have been profound scholars and intellectually quite capable. And at the same time, their most powerful writing sometimes is this deeply emotional, almost, reading it externally, it almost seems like this person was like tortured, because they're just longing. And they're in that longing, their bhakti, their devotion is just churned and deepened. And I'm hearing that in some of what you're speaking. I'm also really struck by, and it connects to some of the things that you and I have talked about in the past as well. This idea of God's purview being the perfect one, and God knowing, the divine, the supreme, knowing what is good for me. And you've shared some very powerful verses and prayers from your tradition. I want to share something from my own tradition that perhaps will resonate. There's a theologian from the 19th century named Bhakti Vinod, who actually, interestingly enough, had a lot of interaction also with Muslim practitioners, particularly with Sufis. So there's a lot of intersection and overlap. But among his devotional poetry, there's a line that I keep coming back to and am really reminded of. And he writes in the Bengali language. He writes, "Marobi rakhobi jo ichha tomara, nitya dasa prati tua adhikara." So he's speaking to God, he's praying to God, and he says, "Take my life or maintain my life. My Lord, whatever is your will. For I am your servant eternally, and you have every claim and right over me." In Sanskrit, this word, or in Indian language, this word adhikar, it kind of denotes this idea of when you have a claim over something or someone. And that prayer has always struck me, but especially now, witnessing your own beautiful realizations and hearing about what you're reflecting on, it very much reminds me of that. Would you share? I remember you sharing this several months ago, but there's a beautiful prayer that I believe is attributed to the Prophet,
yeah,
that perhaps expresses something very similar.
Very similar. And in fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, made this prayer every day. And he said, "Oh God, grant me life for as long as it is good for me, and grant me death when it is good for me." Right? So it really resonates the exact same idea that, God knows best what is good for me. And so for so long as life is good, give that to me. When death is good for me, then grant that for me. Totally being in this state of submission, and not just this. I think in the English spiritual, even in the English spiritual language, but definitely in the English, vocabulary, submission has taken on a very negative term. But in Islam, submission is at the heart of what love is all about. Because once one knows who God is, then there's no type of submission other than loving submission, right? This submission that one turns to out of love, knowing that the one I'm submitting to knows what is truly best for me and will do what is in my best interest, And so it comes out of it comes out of a deep sense of knowledge as to who one is submitting to, and this is both a theological knowledge as well as a spiritual knowledge. And in the Sufi poetry tradition, there's also, in Qawwali, there's these songs that are very similar, in which it says, to God, throw me this way, throw me that way, throw me in there, throw me into the ground, whatever you do, it's all good. Like basically saying, I'm yours, and my responsibility is to say aslamtu. Aslamtu means I accept, and if I accept, then I'm going to see the wisdom and the truth behind it all. But if I reject and if I rebel and I say no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, right, then I'm not going to be able to experience that love and that joy and that beautiful lessons that come out of the experience. And it's just like that wise parent that is trying to push their child toward an act that the child does not want to do because they're too scared, or they're too attached to their own desires or their own egos, and they're like, no, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. But the parent is like, just try this once, this is like the best dish you'll ever experience in your life, just try it once, and I think there's a lot of metaphors like that,
So beautiful. I love that, and it's sparking so the idea of throw me this way, throw me that way. We have very similar prayers. Particularly, there was one mystic saint by the name of Chaitanya who prays in this way. He says, "Ashasya vapadaritam pinashtumam marmahata karotiva." What does he say? Yatatata va vidadata lampato mat prananata stusa eva napraha. That whether you embrace me or whether you throw me this way or that way, in any and every circumstance, you are my beloved and I am yours.
Mm.
So there was, I can only imagine at that time, and this prayer, I believe, goes back to the 15th or 16th century in India, where there was quite a confluence of these kinds of spiritual mystics and masters sharing this love and these realizations of love with one another. So beautiful. Thank you for reminding us of that. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you about the idea of letting go. We've subtitled this event Muslim and Hindu reflections on letting go.
Mm.
And I realized that for some folks, even the term, even the idea of letting go and talking about it seems to imply something we don't want to think about. It seems to imply for some folks a sense of resignation or giving up, maybe even apathy or indifference or callousness, like we just don't care anymore, just let it all go. So when you think about at this time, especially letting go, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a child to your parents, you're a sibling, you're a teacher and a mentor and a friend to so many. There's such meaningful relationships. You've done such amazing, pioneering, relevant work through the Muslim Life Program and so many other endeavors that you've done. How can you talk about letting these things go?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think the first and most important thing is understanding what we mean by, letting it go, right? And I think there can be some serious misunderstandings here. And in fact, this phrase, as you all know, has become so common now because of the Disney movie, right? Let it go, and I remember, when this song became popular, I was very hesitant to have my daughter listen to it because it has so many wrongful implications, right? What does it mean to just let it all go? Are we letting our sense of morality go? Are we letting our sense of ethical direction go? Are we just going to do whatever we want, regardless of what people say? There's so many potentially negative implications to this idea of, letting it go. And so I think, we have to really come to terms with what we mean by this. Because it's a very powerful phrase, and yet it's a very dangerous phrase. For me personally, it's about this idea of, really holding something as sacred and as a trust in your hands and in your heart when God places it there. But realizing that even when it comes to the most special and sacred trusts and works that God gives us, we are only temporary custodians. And there is nothing permanent about anything that God has given us in terms of the trusts that he has bestowed us with, right? And so therefore, letting it go means that we need to know when the time has come to say to something that I have tried my best to nurture you, to love you, to develop you. But now God is calling you to be entrusted in someone else's hands. And this is no longer something that is going to be in the domain of your affairs. And this sense of non-attachment, even to our most sacred trust, even to those things that we consider to be most special in our lives, I think is a very painful, letting it go that we have to do. But at some point we have to do it, and if we're not willing to go down that path of letting these things go when the time is right, then that is an indication to us that we are not holding on to these sacred trusts with our heart, but rather we're holding on to these sacred trusts with our egos. And then that's a further indication to us that we don't actually have a very healthy relationship with these things at all. Because if we're holding on to these things with our egos rather than with our hearts, then we might ultimately do it more harm than good, you know. And this is why we end up seeing people staying in leadership positions for way too long. And this is sometimes why we see overly zealous, control freak parents trying to dictate every move of their children for way too long. And the list of examples, you know, go on and on and on, you know. And sometimes it's really hard because we are fully convinced that we have so much more to offer, you know. And so it goes back to our previous conversation of having this trusting and good opinion of God, that when God says to us, no, you know, your obligations are over, to accept that rather than to be like, no, but I have all of these things left to do. And for me personally, the greatest struggle right now has been undoubtedly accepting that God is saying to me that your 3.5-year-old daughter, the sacred trust that you have of raising her in this world, is now soon coming to an end. Because in my own mind and in my own heart, when we adopted this loving, beautiful elephant that I call her, because it took us 2 years to get her through the whole adoption process, I imagined that I would be spending a long life teaching her wisdom and studying scripture with her, and, you know, bestowing to her all of the knowledge that I thought I had, you know. And for me to accept that God says, this child who doesn't even know how to read yet, who barely understands anything you're saying, you know, this is it. But then I have to reimagine, you know, based on this idea of having a good opinion of God, as to what God is calling me to. Perhaps there's something that I can do for my daughter in the next realm that I'm going to, that I couldn't even do from this realm. And I don't know what the next realm is exactly going to look like. You know, people would come to the prophet and they would say, tell us about the soul, tell us about the ruh. And, you know, the prophet didn't know what to say. And God answered on behalf of him in the Quran by saying, قُلْ عَنِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ, that the soul is of God's affair. وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, and we have very little knowledge about it. So we actually don't know, you know, where this soul is going and exactly what its capacity is going to be beyond this physical world. But I have faith that perhaps there's something that I can do from the next realm for my daughter that I can't even do from this realm. I don't believe that God is actually calling me to a total separation between myself and my daughter, but actually calling me to a greater duty and to a more sacred trust that I can fulfill from the next realm that I can't even fulfill from this realm. I hope that's true, but I trust that whatever it is, it's going to be good based on my theology of God, you know. So that's where I stand, you know, with this issue of letting it go, is just understanding that even to the most sacred works, we are temporary custodians. And, you know, just a few days ago, less than a week ago, you know, I had to make that call where, you know, I was talking to my palliative care team, which is, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically your end of life pain management care team. And just really, you know, being like, you know, struggling with this question of how do I give time to my family and how do I give time to my work? And this doctor who I love so much, she's really, really wise, and not just a doctor of the body, but I think a doctor of the mind and soul. I really appreciate her. You know, she said, you know, do you feel like you're trying to play ball on both sides of the court, and you're just not able to do it anymore. And I said, wow, that's exactly it, you know. And a few hours later, I'm on the phone with Sabrina. She can testify, in total tears, you know, just crying it out and saying, you know, I can't do it anymore. You know, I can't, you know, you know, I can no longer, you know, fool myself into thinking that I'm able to give my community what they need, and my soul what it needs, and my family what it needs. You know, I can't do that anymore. And then having to say, okay, you know, I accept that it's time to let it go. Yeah. And it was one of the saddest moments of life, one of the most inevitable moments of life, and ultimately right now, one of the most liberating moments of life, you know. And Vineet, by when you came to visit me just a few days earlier, even then I didn't know that when we would be talking today that this is where you know, where I would be at. I thought I would still be, you know, part of the team and looking at the rebranding of the ORL and all of those things. But, you know, it came time for me to say, I need to, the time is near, and I need to arrive at God's doorstep with qalbun salim. That's the most important thing right now. And if I don't do that, I'll regret it, you know.
Sohaib, you're so wonderfully modeling this idea of letting go of the notion that we are the controllers, that we are the doers, that we are the only caretakers. And in your letting go of that, and you're demonstrating, you're modeling, and your courageous sharing of that process, your transparency in that process, please know your work continues. It continues to bear fruit. It continues to impact. It will continue to impact. As our dear sister Teresa is saying in the chat room or in the chat box, you will always be a part of the team. And it reminds me of something that you shared with me in that blessed meeting that we had under the tree, where you were appearing like a radiant sage to me. And you said, I won't be able to do it justice. I want you to share it with us. But you talked about how when we go with nothing except 4 things. That there are these 4 things that we can, in some respects, take with us. And if it's okay, would you share that with us now?
Yeah. And so, in fact, it's a tradition from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, where he says, you know, to his companions at one of the funerals that they're at, he says that, you know, when you go to your graves, everything that you've ever worked for will leave you behind, except for 3 things. And the first is continuous charity that people benefit from. So, for example, setting up an orphanage or a school or something that people benefit from way past your lifetime. Your soul will continue to receive its glad tidings and its blessings. And the second is the production of knowledge. So any knowledge that you leave behind that people benefit from, religious knowledge, what we would call secular knowledge, but I wouldn't really call it secular. I would call it sacred knowledge that people benefit from. And thirdly, children who pray for you after you've gone, you know, whether those children are your own biological children or just the next generation that you've worked hard for. And many of you know, my wife and I went through this long journey of infertility. And that's one of the most special parts of our life story. And eventually we ended up adopting, in a very gifted and beautiful way, our beautiful daughter, Radia. But I hope that all of the alumni of Princeton University and of Trinity College and Wesleyan University who benefited even just a little bit from me, will pray for me when I'm in my grave. And that will be one of the things that will be something that my soul receives as a glad tiding.
Sohaib, in Hindu tradition, when a saint has spoken some wisdom that just opens our minds and opens our hearts, it's customary. There's this practice of you exclaim, "Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu." So today I'd like to say, "Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu," everything you're speaking, and it will definitely be so. Your legacy continues in so many ways. You leave so many blessed children and family and siblings, spiritual siblings who are trying in our own small ways to pay it forward from that wonderful example that you've set and the ways that you continue to inspire us. This will live on. As we near the end of this conversation, necessarily, because we want to also honor your time, I want to ask you a little bit about the living part. And if I can just ask your indulgence, ask everyone's indulgence, I just want to share a little bit that there's a great teacher who's actually, in some ways, quite a bridge between our two faith traditions, at least in the context of Indian spirituality. This teacher, Kabir Das.
Yeah.
And Kabir has composed so many wonderful prayers and poetry and song. And I'm thinking of one particular composition where Kabir compares this life that we've been given to a blanket or a shawl. So I'm imagining you, Sohaib, with that shawl that you love to wear. So Kabir says that this life that we've been given is like this shawl, and it was made by the divine weaver. It took 9 months to be stitched together, he says, and it's made with the threads of the various elements. This shawl, he says, when we're born into this world, this shawl is like it's pristine and clean. But day by day, we forget about it. We take it for granted, and we allow the dirt of this material world to soil it and stain it. But then Kabir says, but I take this shawl that I've been given, and I go to the person who dyes cloth, and he dyes it in the bright, beautiful red color. He dyes it in the color of my beloved. Sometimes people say that he dyes it in many, many colors, all the colors that represent Kabir's divine beloved. And Kabir says, I wrap myself in this cloth of the names of God. And then the couplet in this, Kabir says that we all come into this world crying. We're all born, right? Babies are crying when they're born. And as soon as the people of this world, the people around us hear that crying, they rejoice and they celebrate. But Kabir says, may we live our lives so that when we leave this world and our near and dear ones are missing us, and so they're crying tears, but may we be rejoicing, having lived this life of of service to our divine beloved. And may we leave in this way rejoicing.
So beautiful.
So Sohaib, as you reflect on dying with grace, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, what is your reflection on living with grace, on what this life has been, and how that divine beloved has given you this shawl to wrap yourself of his names and attributes in this life?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question, and thank you for sharing that saying, that poem. It's so powerful. It resonates so deeply, and I think I've been sharing a version of it, which I didn't actually realize may actually be coming exactly from the source. But I think, what I would say is, to live a life that is not a life of reciprocity, right? Not to live a life that is, I'm going to be good to those who are good to me. I'm going to be kind to those who are kind to me. And I'm going to be forgiving to those who are forgiving of me. But rather to live a life of the higher station, where you commit yourself to being patient with those who are impatient toward you, and being gentle to those who are harsh with you, and to being generous toward those who are miserly toward you, right? And so to live a life of the higher spirit is, I think, what, we're called upon to do. And I think that all of our, religious and spiritual practices on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis are all about trying to cultivate and elevate that element within the soul, such that our search for happiness is found there, rather than in the lower self, rather than in the egotistic universe, in which it's all just about, at best, reciprocity, and usually far less than that, and so I love, for example, the spiritual discipline that is upon us in just a few weeks as Muslims, the month of Ramadan, where we fast, right? Because in fasting, we learn the spiritual art of transcending reciprocity, and we learn the spiritual art of actually embracing the universe of the higher self, of getting on top of that wild horse, and disciplining it, and directing it toward the graze of the healthiest fields of what life has to offer, which is the fields of virtue, rather than the fields of egotism. And so, that's, what I wish that I had learned from life. And I'm really thankful to God that in this late hour, this is what God has been, really pushing me to learn. As I said earlier, living through illness is truly one of the most difficult things that a person can do, and trying to live through it graciously is extraordinary. But it's one of the greatest divine blessings and opportunities, that present itself. And I think a lot of it is about what we said just a moment ago, which is this idea of learning how to let it go, and knowing that God is the one who is truly in control. And what I mean by that is that God is constantly trying to unveil his beautiful names to us every single moment of our wakeful, every single state of our wakefulness, you know. Um, and what I mean by that is that if we're constantly searching for God and for the names of God, then what we'll find is that God is constantly trying to show us the signs, but the signs are not only going to be grasped intellectually, they're going to be grasped through the ears, through the eyes, through the heart, through the hands, through the feet. And we have to open up all of these avenues. We have to open up all of these avenues of listening to God's signs in order to be able to comprehend the signs of God. And that happens through invocation. That happens through what we call in our Islamic spiritual tradition, zikr. This idea of chanting out the invocations and the names and the praises of God, you know. And the more that we do that, we open up the ears of the heart, the ears of the ears, the ears of the tongue, the ears of the mind and the hands and the feet and so on and so forth. You know, I think in this entire affair, one of the things that somebody said to me that impacted me the most was that when I first got my diagnosis, you know, I said to myself, who's going to take care of my family? Because I still had this veil, dark veil, that I was the one who was commissioned by God to take care of my family, right? And a wise person reminded me that when my daughter was found on one of the cribs in a marketplace in the middle of Karachi, Pakistan, as an orphaned and abandoned child. She was found at a crib that is surrounded by wild dogs and cats and flies. And someone found her, and someone took her to this orphanage that is known as EV Foundation. And from there, someone contacted us and put her in our arms. And the same one who did that act of loving mercy is the same one who, in fact, has all along been in control of taking care of the ones who I thought I was commissioned to take care of, but who in reality are being taken care of by the one. And therefore, you know, living graciously in the world is knowing that every single moment of our lives is actually, you know, an unveiling of not only divine destiny, but divine names. And if we discover the divine names and we embrace ourselves with the cloak of the divine names, you know, as Vineet Bhai was saying in that poem, then that's where illumination happens. That's where true education of the mind and heart happens. That is where the soul actually is allowed to go into the higher realms of what it truly means to be human being beyond, you know, the world of identity politics. You know, and so that's what I've learned in this short life. And you know, I don't know how much longer I have, just as you don't know how much longer you have. So I'm just trying to make every single day count, and now make every single breath count. And quite literally, every morning that I wake up, I feel around to make sure that everything is still actually still the same. You know, that's where I am right now. Like, I'm like literally like, I wake up in the morning and just kind of do this, you know, to make sure that I'm not in under mitti, under dirt, you know. You know, that's where I am, you know, because usually I go to sleep having struggled with, a lot of pain and don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the night. So making every single breath count. One of our great sages, Imam al-Ghazali, he said that, true illumination is to live knowing that every breath is a priceless jewel. And once it is gone, it will never be retrieved, right? So making each and every single one of our breaths count, not just our moments, not just our days, every single breath, make it count, make sure it's being sent, make sure that every single breath is like a seed that you're planting in the ground, and that you're hoping for something beautiful to come out of it. And the good news is that God has made so many wonderful opportunities, for us to plant these seeds of virtue and goodness. Like everything that we do is literally in the realm of goodness. Almost everything that we do is in the realm of goodness, but doing it sincerely for the sake of God, doing it sincerely for the pleasure of God, and doing it sincerely for what is right, and not for the sake of people calling you a strong man or a person of virtue and all of these false titles. Doing it sincerely, that is where the hard work of the heart work, calls us to.
My brother, thank you so much. Your friendship and inspiration, colleagueship, powerful example have just been indescribable gifts. And as we close, and this will perhaps be the final question, as we close, I want to just speak a little bit candidly that we are both situated in traditions that have many really beautiful intertwined episodes of history, and that also have a very complicated history together, a complicated history of tension, of hurt, and of violence. For better and for worse, we inherit our histories and we carry them with us. And I think especially with that in mind, I'm just feeling so grateful that God saw fit to bring us together as friends, as brothers, as members of the entering cohort of 2008 is when we started at Princeton together.
That's right.
So we've gotten to celebrate some milestones together as well. And all the more significant given this historical dynamic of our two traditions. And so in closing, I want to ask you if it's okay, and if you feel like you can do this at this time, if you can close us out as far as the conversation with a blessing or a prayer or a benediction, both for all people and all beings, but particularly in light of these complicated histories and our two communities, perhaps a prayer or benediction that we can offer to future generations within our two beloved and blessed communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me try my best to bring my heart into this very blessed invitation. And, as I do so, one thing that I want to mention, which I haven't quite had the opportunity, but I do want to say this very sincerely, is that, the Muslim life community at Princeton University that people are now in this moment so generously and kindly praising, would not have been built without a really great woman who was not behind me, but rather besides me. And that is, my wife, Arshi. And, many of you know her, and I pray that she has a long life and a lot left to give back to this community. And I know she holds, this place holds a very special place in her heart. And so I hope that, well past my time, whenever you all get to see her, you'll remember me through her and honor her and love her and cherish her and welcome her, into this space as you always have. And I just wanted to say that. And I think this extends into the prayer that, too often our violence and our egregious aggression against each other has taken the form of violent ideological and physical oppression against the women of our community in particular. And so I begin my prayer by invoking the One, the God, the Master, the Holy One, the merciful, the gracious, the dispenser of grace, the generous, the kind, the all-loving One, asking you, begging you, knocking on your door, and begging you from the bottom of our hearts that you protect us from the evilness and from the egotism and from the violence and the darkness and the oppression that has plagued our communities in the past and continues to plague our communities in the present. And to direct us, oh loving Master, Teacher, Guide, toward those teachers of ours, those gurus and those masters of ours, those saints and those sages and those prophets and those messengers of ours who directed us toward the spirit of goodness, the spirit of holiness, the spirit of kindness and virtue, and who unveiled for us through our spiritual practices the unveiling of reality as reality should be, and truth as truth should be, and goodness as goodness should be, and righteousness as righteousness should be. Oh God, guide us in this moment that is upon us, a moment of darkness for humanity, a moment of great injustice and wickedness and oppression that humanity faces from the ways in which we engage in race wars and poverty and homelessness. Oh God, protect us from that. Oh God, protect us from that. Oh God, protect us from that. Remove us from that and show us the better way. Show us the way of peace. Show us the way of tolerance. Show us the way of good character. Show us the way of the hard work of heart work. Show us what it means to be truly human, what it means to be truly illuminated, what it means to be truly a servant of yours. Make us Ibadur Rahman, servants of the most merciful and gracious one. O God, guide us in every moment, every breath, every day, every hour, every week and every month and every year of our lives. For when you guide us, then we are successful. And when you leave us astray, then we have no one to guide us. O God, leave us to our own affairs, not even for the blink of an eye, but rather guide us in every moment and every affair. Open up for us the ears and the eyes of our entire spiritual beings, so that we may see you and we may hear you whenever you inspire and reveal unto us your signs, whether those signs are out in the horizons or those signs are deep within ourselves, or those signs are in the skies, or whether those signs are in the oceans, or whether those signs are in the books and in the scriptures, or whether those signs are in the teachers and the sages. Wherever the signs may exist, O God, O loving one, open up our eyes and our ears, the physical ones and the spiritual ones, so that we may comprehend what you are saying to us, so that we may see and hear what you are saying to us, so that we may be people who possess true knowledge, knowledge that is of benefit, knowledge that is of benefit, knowledge that allows us to grow, to develop, to be nurtured, and to be nurturing. Oh God, show us the way. Show us the way. Show us the way. We need you. And when our final hour comes upon us, O God, then let us be among those who have let it all go, our attachments, our egos, our darknesses, our temptations, and allow us to be free, liberated. Allow us to be free. Allow us to be liberated. Allow us to fly. Allow us to soar. Allow us to experience the beauty of what the entirety of the universe is all about. Make our deaths better than our lives. Make our hereafter be better than the present. Allow us to endure the sad songs of separation, to come to the happy tunes of reunion with you and with your blessed and holy creation, and allow us to sip tea and coffee and to eat food of the most blessed nature together in the highest of abodes that are physical and metaphysical. Allow Vineet Bhai and I to embrace one another with joy, with kisses, with hugs, with recognition, with hearts that have once again found each other after longing for each other, years of separation. Oh God, we ask all of this in all of your holy names, not because we are deserving, but because you are the bestower of gifts, even upon the least deserving of us. Amen. Amen. God, please accept.
I mean, thank you so much, Imam Sohaib and Chaplain Vineet, for letting us just sit with you and sip from your tea of wisdom and everything that you've given, exactly what we needed in our hearts. It's just been such a beautiful and spiritually nourishing conversation. And I know that a lot of us are having a hard time letting go, letting Imam Sohaib go. We just want this conversation to continue on and on. But we're just so grateful, so deeply grateful. And I want to turn it over to the co-president of the Hindu student group, who will offer a prayer before we close. So I want to invite Saji Naikar, who's the co-president of the Hindu student group, to offer a prayer.
कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Whatever I do with my body, speech, mind, senses, using my intellect, arising from the emotions of my heart or the natural tendencies of my mind. Whatever I do, let it be done for the benefit of others without any attachment to the fruit of my actions, and I surrender all of my actions to God. Let there be peace, let there be peace, let there be peace.
Thank you so much, Saji. That was so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining, for being here, for being present. And I want to give everyone in the Zoom an opportunity to, just send their greetings and their love. So we're going to allow for people to unmute themselves. But once again, I want to thank Imam Sohaib and Chaplain Vineet and all of you who've come out here with your hearts, and thank you so much. With that, I will close and allow us to say hello.
Thank you again, my dear brother Sohaib, sending you so much love and gratitude. I don't have the words, but we love you so much and we're so grateful for you, and you are such a blessing in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet Bhai. This was one of the greatest gifts of life.
Thank you both. Lots of love. I don't know if we're supposed to talk, but so I want that to be said. Yeah.
Yes, you're supposed to talk, guys. Or we can just sit here and just,
I guess it's always hard over Zoom, but I too want to chime in and say thank you so much. I think that
Sohaib, I'm just going to say hi. It's Patricia.
Hi, Patricia.
I just thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to share all that with us. That was really lovely.
Oh, just love you so much, Patricia. Miss you.
Love you too. And don't worry, we will always welcome Arshi and Radhia. We hope that they always come back to visit. Don't worry about that.
They will. And Radhia is going to steal more of your paper.
Okay. Well, I'll be looking forward to it. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop talking now to give other people a turn. But thank you. Thank you, Sohaib.
Thank you, Patricia.
Imam Sohaib, this is Manav.
Manav.
And thank you. I had the unique blessing of being at Princeton when you started your beautiful, beautiful work there alongside Vineet Bhaiya. And what you shared with us at the start of your work and what you share with us now is soaked in such beautiful wisdom, devotion, universality, and true, true, true love. Thank you so much. And please let a spark of your radiant soul bless me and bless all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Manav. It's so good to see you after all these years. You look even more beautiful than you were when you were in undergrad.
Thank you.
Hi, Sohaib. This is Janavi.
Hey, Janavi, my favorite. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, it's hard to know what to say, but I'm just really grateful.
I'm grateful to see you. It's wonderful to see you after all these years. I remember many precious moments in our office together.
Yeah, and I do as well, and a lot of bonding over samosas in Murray Dodge around Friday Jummah. Yeah, it's there's so much to hold on to.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly.
Hi, Sohaib. I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I don't even think I can put into words how grateful I am both for today and for the incredible community that you built and your incredible work and warmth and love. So thank you.
Thank you, Dorva. It's so nice to see you. Your memories always are so precious, and it's so nice to see you after all these years.
Hello, and first of all, thanks for the great talk from both Vineet and Sohaib. And hi, Sohaib, I really miss you. It's been a long time.
Salam alaikum, Zara.
Salam, salam.
Yeah, we miss you so much. The COVID has pulled
Yeah,
us away from each other. It's been hard. That separation has been hard.
exactly. And honestly, coming to Princeton and knowing you and your family and Muslim community at Princeton is one of the real factors that makes me proud of knowing people here. Like, you are one of the best, honestly, and in my whole life. And it's so surprising for me to come here and come straight here and get to know about like you as great people here. And I'm so grateful. Like, I've been so lucky to know you, and you're gonna be always in our hearts forever. Like, and I also was talking to my mom, and she says she's gonna pray for you and like my whole family. And also I wanted to ask you, please pray for us. Like, I think you're so close to God, like, you're so intimate with God. So I just wanted to ask you about this.
You're always in my prayers, and I love you so much, Zahra. And
thank
you. We'll always be bonded together through our souls.
Sure. Yeah.
Really happy to see you.
Yes, me too.
Hi, Imam Sohaib. I'm Sinem, joining from Turkey. I didn't have a chance to meet you in person, but I heard a lot from Vineet, and I'm actually regretting that I didn't have a chance to meet you. But thanks for sharing. It was very precious. I'm very thankful to hear that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Sinem. And it's so beautiful to hear your words, and my tears are with you, and they embrace your tears. And hopefully we'll have a chance in the next world to see each other and spend more time.
Imam Sohaib, I we also have not had the chance to meet before, but I have heard so much about you from Vineet, and I'm sorry, I'm feeling so humbled that in my lifetime I was brought in the presence of such a great devotee, and I'm feeling so grateful. So thank you so much. I'm sorry.
No, please don't be sorry. It's so nice to hear from you, and may your kind opinion of me be true. And I hope we get to spend so much more time in the eternal realm. And I want to learn from you and also get to know you.
Salam Imam Sahib.
Hey, Ariana. Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Thank you for speaking today. And, I'm just really missing you. And
yeah,
over the years, I've, kind of reflected on like feeling really grateful of, being able to come to Princeton. And I feel like, God wrote in my plans for me to come to Princeton so that I could meet you and, be part of the Muslim Life program. And I'm so grateful for that. I don't think, I could have gotten this experience anywhere else. And I'm just so grateful to have you as my imam.
I'm so grateful to have come into touch with you, Ariana. You're one of my favorite people, and you know how much I'm expecting from you in terms of raising and taking care of Radia. So
inshallah, yes, of course. Yeah, your whole family is always in my duas.
Yours too. Yours too.
My dear friends, it's so difficult. We want to stay on this Zoom call forever and ever and ever, but we also want to honor and show our care for our dear brother and our imam and our friend, our teacher, Sohaib. And he's been with us for quite a while, and I know he's just giving so much. But at this time, we're going to just ask for everyone to, from the core of your hearts, please share one final silent prayer or dua or reflection, so that we can, whatever blessings we're capable of giving, we can share those blessings in the spirit of supporting our dear brother on his journey. And let us give those blessings to each other so that we can embrace and hold one another in our very painful situation of having to say goodbye, knowing that the gifts that Imam Sohaib is blessing us with will continue perpetually. I want to thank you all so much for making this possible and for joining us. And I want to especially again thank and offer my respects and my love to my dear brother Sohaib. And it's my greatest hope and aspiration that we can have that beautiful reunion you spoke of. Whether or not there's chai there, we'll have that beautiful reunion. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sohaib. We love you.
Thank you, Vineet Bhai. I love you so much, and I love all of you. And take good care. Be well, do justice, do righteousness, and look forward to embracing each other on the other side of the ocean.